Welcome back to Safety News. This is Russ Kinsey. And today we have an interesting interview with a gentleman by the name of Tom Boyer, who's the president of a company called IR Tools out of Crofton, Maryland. And Tom's company manufactures a really interesting line of infrared emblems and targets and these type of items that really go towards improving the safety of law enforcement and the military. Tom, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Russ.
Well, tell us about you and how you came up with this product. And I don't want the secret sauce, but you got some really interesting products. And thanks for the samples. These kind of badges that affix to people's professionals' uniforms, the Marshal Service. You got SWAT. My favorite, second favorite. We are partial to the Texas flag here in Texas. But tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the products that you manufacture.
Sure. So I had actually been working somewhat in the industry as a young person, and had been working on my MBA, trying to better myself, this sort of thing. And all of a sudden, I found myself without a job. And this actually the company I was with. The owner, or the president rather, and the vice president both went to jail for tax fraud and fraud with the government. And so suddenly that company went bankrupt and people went everywhere. And so I was, without a job, without any income, that sort of thing. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, so what the heck am I going to do? And so in that company, we had been, working with the military specifically, producing friend-foe identification patches, and we were just reselling another company's product. And so I just, started thinking like, heck, this thing cannot be that complicated. And so I was able to find a couple key partners that knew stuff that I didn't know. And so we were able to re-engineer our own friend-foe patch so we could manufacture it ourselves. And then I started reaching out to folks that I knew in the industry that were, had been buying our product when I was just a reseller. And somehow they believed in me and said, sure, we'll buy your product. We'll give you a try. And so we did. We started manufacturing and building these little tiny patches that would help the military be able to identify themselves one to another using just night vision. And clearly the problem at the time, which unfortunately is still a problem, is, a lot of the combat deaths are due to friendly fire when there's confusion on the battlefield and actually one of our own people shoot one of our own people.
Now, is this kind of like a proprietary technology, meaning you don't want these are safety devices falling in the hands of the enemy where, when I say the enemy, I mean specifically in the military where, you have others who are buying this technology, putting it on their stolen uniforms and, in essence, creating kind of a safety problem even in and of itself. Is there some control over this technology, or is it to that level where it needs to have some levels of control?
So there definitely is some control, and we definitely introduce our own controls. We do quite often have folks from other civilian pursuits, either collectors or people doing airsoft and these sort of things, and they would like to get the same safety technology, more for fun, that sort of thing, and we don't sell to them. We just sell to military and law enforcement and other agencies that, they have that need for this kind of technology. The differentiation is really that it does not reflect white light. So that means that if you're out in the middle of the woods in Iraq or whatever, you've got a flashlight and you shine the flashlight at this technology, you will not get a reflection. But if you have the night vision and you shine the same night vision energy at the patch, then you do see the reflection coming back at you. So the real key is that it does not reflect white light, which gives our allies the covertness that they need, which in reality, if we're playing airsoft, we don't necessarily need that kind of covertness. And clearly, if we flooded that market, then it would be a significant danger to our men and women out in the field, because they could be spoofed and very, very confused.
So, who is the mastermind behind this technology, and how far back in time does it go?
So the original technology, honestly, was started during, I think, Desert Storm 2, which would have predated our company. So that was the original idea. I think we came in maybe 10 years after that and developed our version. Now, what was interesting was that the Army, in the meantime, had actually come up with a new specification that created a more safe, more durable product. And so we were actually the first ones to follow that new specification and developed a more durable product. We call it Sandstorm technology. But at the end of the day, you can imagine, I have a safety patch, an IFF patch on my shoulder, and I'm trusting that to protect me and to identify me to my fellow soldiers. If that product fails, you're actually in a worse situation than if you'd never had it in at all. Because if you never had it, now you'd be looking for people that don't have a patch. But now, if everybody assumes that people have patches, and then suddenly one person's patch fails, then that person can easily be mistaken for an unfriendly person. And so the durability is actually a super critical piece of this puzzle in order to keep people safe.
Now, how would law enforcement, Tom, use this? I mean, I have the blue line. I mean, I understand the military aspect, but how would is that like a SWAT team or just a rank and file police officer would be using this technology as well?
Yeah. So that's a great question, because the use case within military and law enforcement is very different. So there are certainly SWAT folks that will wear the black covert, what we call IR field, and they would use it very similarly to the military. They'll be using night vision. They will be in houses. It will be dark. They'll be trying to stay covert, and that use case is actually very similar. But the majority of police, they actually use similar products that are white light reflective. And it becomes the distinction is that they want to be seen by their buddies that are using night vision. So they want to get that infrared reflection, but they also do not want to be covert, because in their case, safety is often being seen by either people driving vehicles or just by regular citizens. So it is a danger for a policeman when a civilian doesn't recognize that they are a policeman. So it's very important for that policeman to be seen as a policeman. And so when they wear a identifier that at night glows so that they can be seen very easily, that's actually very important. And it's also important because for the policemen, should anything bad happen, one of the things they need to show is that the public was aware that they were a policeman. And so the ability, the effectiveness of the policeman to show to the public, hey, I am police, is very important. And so our reflective technology, being seen with white lights, with headlights, that sort of thing, that helps them to be safer in a legal standpoint as well as seeing each other's standpoint. So it's a similar case, but it's very different at the same time.
Now, I would anticipate that if a law enforcement officer changes uniforms or one of the patches gets damaged, that there's a disposal process. You don't want these to fall in the hands of, it's not like you go to the Goodwill store to buy used, jackets and, hey, by the way, I want the one that has the SWAT on it, Is there a process within law enforcement or the military to dispose of, the patches once they're damaged or for whatever reason need to replace them?
That is a very good question, and quite honestly, one that I can't answer. So I don't know what they do. I do know that in our case, any scraps we take and shred them completely so that they couldn't be used at all. Uh, I'm sure there is a process, but I'm not familiar with what they do.
Hmm. Is there a special requirement? I noticed some of these have unique kind of colors. You have a black on a beige. You have black lettering. Then you have this one, which is pretty interesting. It actually has the reflective material, kind of like a plastic coating. How is that different than the other ones, Tom? I mean, it would appear they're different technologies. Is that
Yep.
correct? Different applications, different
Yes.
technologies.
So the one patch that's green and black, that is a good example of what the military or potentially SWAT would use. So anything black that has that characteristic of being not white light reflective. Any of our products that you see that are more the silver or gray color, those are examples of products that are white light reflective, and that would be more typical of what a regular policeman might wear on his everyday duty.
Do you have a market outside of the United States? Are there other countries or other law enforcement agencies and any other military, countries that have a military that would utilize your technology or use your technology, much like here in the United States?
Yeah, we certainly do. We've partnered with the U.S. Commercial Service to find quite a number of international dealers, and in our case, most of our sales have been in the European Union, but we've had sales on every continent in the world at some point.
The safety benefit is that primarily just based on the infrared technology, the reflective nature? Is that kind of what this is all about? Protecting members of our military and law enforcement so they don't get accidentally injured or shot by another law enforcement official or officer or military officer? Is that the inherent safety quality or benefit of the product line?
Yes, that is the inherent. Everything under the foundation of everything is preventing friend, foe, or friend to friend interactions. Yes.
Like every good product or even great products, there's always a shortfall. There's always oh boy, if we are always looking to improve our product's performance. What's the biggest complaint that you normally get from your customers? What is it that they say, gee, Tom, it'd be great if you could do the following? That there's a specific need or request from your customer. What do you normally hear from them?
Sure. So the big issue that we're facing right now is that 10, 20 years ago, the only ones that had night vision were the U.S. and its allies. And so when you were out in the middle of the night and you saw a night vision patch, that was obviously a friend because the U.S. was the only ones having night vision. Things have changed quite a bit over the years, and now there's quite a bit of thermal imaging. There is also new technology coming out called shortwave infrared or SWIR, which uses, again, another part of the energy spectrum. And so one of the complaints that I've heard on the battlefield, for example, a helicopter is coming in. So when that helicopter looks out on the scene, they just see IR patches everywhere. And in fact, there's so many that it just is overwhelming to the pilots. And so they have this challenge that it's proliferated everywhere. And now the bad guys, they have night vision as well. And so now, whereas the balance before was that if I were an IR patch, I'm safe from my greatest fear, being shot by my friend. But now there's a much more subtle distinction because I'm having to decide, okay, if I wear this IR patch right now during this operation, I'm protected from my friend. But what if the other guy has night vision and now I actually say, hey, here I am. And so working through that is quite a challenge. So now in the industry, we're moving toward, okay, so how do we mark using thermal? Because, we have more thermal than the other guy. And so thermal is more safe. And then moving into SWIR, which SWIR is very expensive. And so, that makes it harder, extra hard for the bad guys to get the material. So we are working to create friend foe identifiers that work with those thermal cameras as well as the shortwave infrared, the SWIR. But here's your challenge is if you have 100,000 soldiers that all have, friend foe identifiers based on night vision, like how do you transition from that? Like you can't just say, all right, 101st, you're all going to take yours off. And now you're in theater with one group that wears it and one group that doesn't wear it. You've got a lot of confusion. So somehow that transition that we're trying to develop from night vision to thermal has to be done in such a way that during the transition, you don't develop this incredible confusion and you actually create more friend on friend casualties because you didn't transition well.
Have you gotten any feedback from your customers specifically as it relates to how many lives may have been saved because of this technology? Meaning, before soldiers had the IR badges, the likelihood of getting friendly fire, getting killed or wounded from friendly fire had this many casualties versus after the technology has been implemented. Are you aware of any significant decrease in injuries as a result of your technology?
No, we've not been allowed to see any of those numbers. I do know the Army works those numbers and has those sort of numbers, but it's not something that they would share with us. But it's a metric that we can't specify how many lives we saved, but we know that we've sent tens of millions, around 10 million different patches over the years. And so we just believe that there's a percentage of those that saved lives. And so it is very rewarding knowing that you've saved lives and there's people that came home to their kids and families because of a product that you put out there.
Yeah, and for many people that are listening to this show, it's hard to count what didn't happen. In my background, preventing slips and falls, oftentimes customers would say, how do I know it's working? And I would say, well, how many slip and fall injuries have you had? And they say, well, we haven't had any. Well, that means it's working. So you're kind of counting what didn't happen. And I guess you're kind of in the same industry. It's hard to know, but you do know that your customers are certainly believing there's a benefit because they keep purchasing your products in larger, increasing volumes. Product suggestion from a guy in Texas who, like many people here, a lot of hunters. Would there be a market for the hunters, people who, let's say use Dick Cheney as an example. You're out at night, you're hunting in the forest, and you come across another hunter that you think might not be a hunter, might be an animal or deer. How do you foresee, or do you foresee actually creating a marketplace for your technology for hunters?
That's a great question. What we have seen is that typically our military and law enforcement technology flows down into the civilian market. And so we have seen that with our targetry, but we haven't yet pushed that in the personal identification space. But what we intend, we have some thermal visible markers. And we are aware there was a situation in the Carolinas maybe 3 years ago, where a hunter was mistaken for a animal, and he was shot by a person that had a thermal sight that, just thought he was a boar or, whatever. And so we have a 4-inch by 4-inch thermal visible patch, which we are hoping to make available, but hoping that it becomes popular with hunters so that, when you look out, you see a distinct marker on the side of a person, that that's a person and, not a boar.
Right, because having gone to more than my share of gun shows, they do sell similar reflective badges, or one that is very popular is a reflective hat, like a baseball cap that has a band on it. You see this for like the fire department, or people that are working on the highway, and they'll have the bright yellow vest with apparently the similar type of technology, different colors, orange and yellow, that sort of thing. And so it would appear that they're using a similar technology to yours in different industries. But what about a hat? What about making a hat that, or a badge that would affix to a military officer's or soldier's head, to actually see their head? I mean, is that something that you've been working on, or there's no interest in that?
So yes, we have been working on that. Interestingly, we have a few prototypes where we're working on low-cost baseball caps or painter-style caps that would have our technology, so that a law enforcement, they could roll into an area, say they're doing a search and rescue, and say they were working with another group of law enforcement, or say they've got 100 civilians out there helping them to go look. That these baseball caps could be used to mark individuals in order to be seen by the drone. But one thing, let me just step back briefly. In order to be safe as a hunter or anybody else, the first thing you do need to understand is, what am I being observed by? So if the people in the woods are using thermal scopes, or if they're using night vision scopes, those are two very different technologies. And so having some understanding of what technology is being used to see me dictates what sort of technology I use to be seen by them. So the gear that you referenced with the yellow stripes and that sort of thing, that would work really well with night vision. So if you knew that night vision is what's going on in my state, then wearing that technology would be great. But on the other hand, if you knew that, no, what we use in Texas, everybody's out there with thermals, that would dictate a separate technology. And if you said, you know what, I don't have a clue, there's probably some people using both technologies, then it's, again, it's combining those technologies. So before you can say, will I be safe outside in the woods doing hunting, you first want to ask the question of, what technology are other people using in order to see, which is the same question the military uses and the law enforcement use all the time, because knowing what you're being observed by dictates very specifically what technology you want to use to be seen and identified.
There's, every state has laws regarding hunting. I'm just curious, have you been approached by any state or municipality saying, hey, we want to implement a new policy requiring hunters to have reflective vests on or hats? You see it all the time, especially during daylight, where hunters are required to wear a bright colored, orange vest or hat to identify them during the daytime. Obviously, there's not a big demand for night vision at night, because it's generally illegal to be hunting at night. You're not supposed to be hunting at night, so you don't want to encourage hunters to be out shooting animals at night, because that's extremely dangerous. But let's flip this around. Let's kind of change it from hunters to we kind of go back to law enforcement. I'm thinking, you're incarcerated, you're in prison, and you have a prison uniform, and in the unlikely event that a prisoner actually escapes from prison, wouldn't this be kind of a great technology to have sewn into their their jumpsuits or whatever? So if they do get out, and it's nighttime and they escaped, it'd make it a little bit easier. And maybe I'm wrong. Make it a little bit easier to catch prisoners that might have escaped prison.
Potentially, that is certainly the case. There's an interesting distinction with our products. Our products are specifically made toward identification is the primary mode, as opposed to simply detection. So certainly it's used in both cases, but it is important. It is definitely helpful to understand there's two differentiations. So when we talk about identification, we're talking about saying, is this John or is this Bob? Is this the canine unit or is this the regular unit? Detection is just, I see something there. So in a search and rescue standpoint, so let's look at that case. The person that we're looking for, we're using night vision, we're using thermal, we're trying to find that person. There's not a huge need for identification of the person because we're just looking for that one guy. So we care about detection. So we're out there, we've got our drones and cameras and that sort of thing. We're just trying to detect that person. For the people that are looking, you may need to differentiate between a law enforcement and a civilian helper. You may need to identify between the person you're looking for and the people that are looking. And so our technology shines when you're trying to do identification or trying to differentiate one from the other. In terms of detection, night vision or thermal is very good about just detecting people. And so you've got that camera up, you're like, yep, there's a blob over there. I've detected them. And if that's all you need, search and rescue, potentially that prison escapee, you're just looking for a hot blob, then that camera does a pretty darn good job by itself. When you get into that identification, now you're talking about command and control, you're talking about limiting confusion, you're talking about people not hurting each other. And so that really is where this technology shines the most in that identification realm.
How about canines? Military, working, dog canines, law enforcement. Is this something you offer, like a dog vest or some type of a means of identification for those military canines and law enforcement canines?
Sure. So we have not done a lot of work with military canines, but we have done some work with law enforcement canines. In fact, the interesting thing that I didn't recognize at all until I got into this was that canine is actually one of the key entry points for this technology, and that we've offered this technology to law enforcement, and particularly in the vehicle area where they're trying to identify vehicles. The very first place that they will use the technology is on the canine vehicle. And the way they have explained it to me is that when they have an operation, 5-6 vehicles may be coming to the scene all at one time. For the command and control staff, it's important for them to immediately recognize the canine vehicle when it comes on the scene, because they have a special job to do. So they need to differentiate who's the canine and who is not. And so the very first thing people will do is put a decal on the canine vehicle in order to differentiate that vehicle. And then the second thing they'll often do is put markers onto the law enforcement gentleman who's handling the dog, and then the dog itself. And some of that is driven by what's the other wildlife in the area. So if there's going to be foxes and coyotes and that sort of thing in the area, then again, differentiation, it's important to put that marker onto the dog so that during the operation, you can distinguish, well, where's our dog versus where are, the wildlife. However, in other situations, if the handler is always tethered to the dog, because there's cases where they're tethered and cases where they're not. If the handler is always tethered, and some municipalities, that's the rule, you never let your dog go. In that case, it's more important just to mark the vehicle, and they don't bother marking the dog. It's all about confusion. If confusion can be put in place, then the technology is employed to differentiate.
Yeah, it's kind of like you watch episodes of Cops and you see the dog, go after the bad guy. Hey, warning, if you don't come out, we're sending the dog in. Well, it's nighttime and the dog's gone. I mean, the dog took off. He's chasing somebody, and you want to find both your dog and the individual. Obviously, sound is going to be a primary means by which you identify the animal, but you don't want to shoot your dog, right? But accidentally,
Absolutely.
as you're
Absolutely.
pursuing a bad guy that might have a weapon. So it would seem like there would be some opportunity, because it is about protecting. It's protecting the
Yeah.
individual, protecting the animal.
We just
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we just had a interesting application that is exactly what you said. There's a gentleman, I believe he's from Texas. I don't know how close to you, but I believe he's Texas. And they're having a problem with, they've got coyotes, they've got pigs that are out on their property. And so what he is trying to do, he's trying to get all of his neighbors to get all of their dogs with our thermal patches onto the dogs, because as a group, as neighbors, they'll go out and shoot the coyotes, shoot the pigs at night, but they want to make sure that they find a way to keep their own dogs safe, and so they're trying to mark their dogs with the technology so they don't shoot
Right.
them.
So how do you keep the bad guys who have our technology, or this IR technology, from shooting us, because our soldiers, because they're kind of sitting ducks? I mean, they can see our soldiers, I would presume, more clearly because of these IR patches. I mean, doesn't that kind of work in reverse, where maybe it's endangering our men and women in the military?
Yes, that's a great question. Fortunately, the Army is not depending on me and my brain to figure out that problem, but it is a big deal. What I have been told is that in any certain operation, there will be an evaluation that basically says, should we use our technology, our IR identifiers during this operation? Are we more at risk or less at risk? And they'll make a decision at that point to say, cover up all of your IR markers, take them off, or they'll say, no, leave them on. And they'll make a decision as a group as to whether it's better to keep it or to not keep it for a certain operation.
We've been spending a lot of time talking about IR patches, but you also make the targets. I mean, the various types of targets that are used by, I presume, a bigger audience, not just military and law enforcement, but recreational shooters. Let's talk a little bit about your targets, and who uses your targets, and what markets do you find yourself flourishing in?
Sure. The market that has really taken off recently has been with hunters, and it's primarily in zeroing, which, clearly if your rifle is not properly zeroed, that's not safe for anybody. So we do have that target, and then another similar target. One is just for thermal sighting. One allows you to sight in lasers, night vision, or thermal. Both of these has been, selling pretty well on our website, on our Amazon store, and it's a relatively inexpensive way to sight in. It is very similar to existing technology that has been used over the years, but what we've done is we were able to refine it, put it all together in a simple package, and improve a little bit on what's out there from a do-it-yourself standpoint. But yeah, that's been good. And then to a little bit of a lesser standpoint, we've been doing quite a bit of training targets, and that's simply once you've zeroed in, you want to get out on the range and take some shots, because maybe you're new with the thermal sight, new with the night vision sight, and you want to make sure you're proficient before you get out there and actually start pulling the trigger.
Any new products that you see coming out soon on the horizon?
Sure. Yeah, we have a couple of new products. One that we're just releasing here maybe in 60 days. We actually have a new thermal film, which is clear to the naked eye. So what this is, it's a film. It looks a lot like packing tape if you were to look at it, but it has a thermal visibility to it. And so it's something that is specifically for law enforcement and military to a lesser extent, but law enforcement especially, where they have an undercover vehicle and they'd like to be able to trail that undercover vehicle from a drone, from a helicopter, be able to identify it among many other vehicles, but they don't want it to be obviously known by everybody else, all the civilians and such around there, that it has been marked special, because they don't, again, they want it to stay undercover. So that's a brand new product that we're coming out with.
I've been speaking with Tom Boyer, president of IR Tools out of Crofton, Maryland. And before I let you go, I have to ask the obvious question. How did the name IR Tools be the name of your company? It seems like an odd name. What's the tool component here that I'm missing?
Sure. So in the beginning, we were infrared tools, very similar. And the idea was that we would be providing tools to the night vision and thermal market that they would use with their night vision cameras and scopes. We always looked at ourselves as an accessory manufacturer. So we never had any plans or intentions to make night vision scopes, make thermal imaging cameras. That was never our bag. We just wanted to make products that made those products more effective in the world. And so that's where infrared tools came from. And then about maybe 6-8 years ago, we kind of rebranded and tried to figure out what was a better name and this sort of thing. And as we talked to all of our customers and said, what do you like? What's good? This sort of thing. The consensus was that they all are like, we just call you IR Tools, and that's what we call you whenever we talk about you. And we're like, well, if that's what all of our customers call us, go there.
Why fix it if it ain't broken? Can our audience purchase your products? Is there a retail channel, Amazon, or directly from your website, or is this just strictly commercial contract type of sales?
Yeah. So right now you can buy from Amazon and from our store. And actually everything that is currently on Amazon or our store are civilian products. So they are commercial products that anybody can buy. At this point, we don't have any of our military or law enforcement products sold through our website. At some point, if we can differentiate between people, we may make those available or have a special store just for military and law enforcement. So military and law enforcement, you have to contact us directly. And then on a commercial, you can go right to Amazon or our website.
Any chance I might bump into somebody selling these at the Texas Gun Show?
You never know. We've got a number of dealers in Texas, so it could be there.
Tom Boyer, well, thanks for an interesting discussion about a technology that does lend itself towards protecting people that a lot of people, including myself, really had little knowledge about. It seems like a well thought through technology that does serve an important purpose, and wish you the best. And we may bring you back one day when you get some new products out. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I'd be happy to come back. Thank you very much.